The private airfield buzzed with an unusual tension as Marcus Thompson strode across the tarmac. At 45, his charcoal suit couldn't hide the military precision in his stride. Dark clouds loomed overhead, matching the strange unease creeping up his spine. "Evening, Mr. Thompson," called the ground crew supervisor, his voice wavering slightly. Marcus nodded, noting how the man's eyes darted to the far end of the hangar. Something was off. Through the corner of his eye, Marcus caught movement, shadows where there shouldn't be any. His hand instinctively brushed against his left arm, where a distinguished Flying Cross medal once pinned to his Air Force uniform. 10 years of civilian life hadn't dulled his instincts. "Pre-flight checks are complete, sir," said the co-pilot, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. Marcus climbed aboard his Cessna Citation, every nerve crackling with awareness. Behind his calm exterior, his mind raced through emergency protocols, old habits from thousands of combat flight hours. "Would you like me to continue with the next section of the story?" Marcus had barely settled into the pilot's seat when the cabin door burst open. 3 men in black tactical gear stormed in, weapons raised. The tallest one, face obscured by a ski mask, pressed a gun against the co-pilot's head. "Out! Now!" he barked. The co-pilot scrambled away, leaving Marcus alone with the intruders. "Well, look what we got here," sneered the second man, pulling off his mask to reveal a face twisted with contempt. "Didn't know they let your kind fly private planes." "Probably stole it," said the third, jabbing his weapon toward Marcus. "Listen up, boy. You're gonna fly us to these coordinates, no questions asked." Marcus raised his hands slowly, his expression neutral despite the slurs. Years of facing discrimination had taught him patience, and combat experience had taught him timing. He studied each hijacker methodically, their stance, their weapons, their behaviors. "Sir, I'll cooperate fully," Marcus replied, his voice steady and professional. The leader seemed thrown by his calm demeanor. "Coordinates are in Mexico," the leader growled, shoving a paper at Marcus. "No fancy stuff, no emergency signals. We know all the tricks." Marcus glanced at the numbers while cataloging details. The leader was ex-military, his stance revealed that much. The racist one was unstable, trigger finger twitching. The third stayed quiet, probably the most dangerous. "Weather's getting rough," Marcus mentioned casually, noting the storm clouds through the windshield. "We'll need to file an alternate flight plan." "Just shut up and fly," the second man shouted, but Marcus caught the leader's slight nod. They needed his expertise, and that gave him an advantage. As he began the startup sequence, Marcus's mind was already formulating a plan. "Would you like me to?" As the plane climbed through turbulent clouds, Marcus kept his movements deliberate and calm. Through the cabin mirror, he watched the leader make a call. "Package secured. Thompson's plane is under our control. Once we cross the border, your cartel friends better have our payment ready." Marcus adjusted the heading, processing this new information. Not just hijackers, drug runners who'd specifically targeted his plane. The racist comments were a cover for something bigger. "Bet you never flew anything this nice in the hood," the second hijacker taunted, leaning too close to the cockpit controls. "Actually, I flew F-22 Raptors," Marcus replied, spotting an opportunity. "Much more sophisticated than this. The electronics can be tricky though, one wrong switch and you trigger alerts." The hijacker jerked back from the panel, exactly as Marcus had hoped. His fingers discreetly activated the emergency transponder while pretending to adjust the altitude. Thunder cracked outside as they hit another patch of turbulence. The third hijacker finally spoke, his voice tight with anxiety. "We need to drop lower. Radar will spot us up here." "Negative," the leader snapped. "Stay on course. Air traffic's too heavy at lower altitudes." Marcus noted the rising tension between them. The storm was making them nervous, and nervous people made mistakes. He keyed his radio, keeping his tone conversational. Dallas Center, citation November 47 Tango. Request weather update for Vector 209er. A seemingly routine call, but one that would tell ground control something was wrong. He deliberately used the wrong tail number. Got a bad feeling about this guy, the third hijacker muttered. He's too cool about all this. The leader stepped forward, eyes narrowing. You trying something clever, pilot? Would you like me to continue with the as lightning flashed outside, Marcus initiated his plan. Looks like we need to change course. Storm cell ahead is too dangerous to punch through, he announced, knowing the turbulence would mask his subtle course corrections. Stay on the original heading, the second hijacker demanded, pushing his gun closer. You people always try to outsmart your way out of things. Listen, Marcus replied, his voice taking on a submissive tone that played into their prejudices. I know you think I'm just some affirmative action hire, but these storms will tear this plane apart. Even a white pilot would tell you the same thing. The leader frowned, looking at the radar display. Marcus had counted on their ignorance. They couldn't read the aviation instruments properly. What they saw as a storm cell was actually him gradually turning them back toward U.S. airspace. Maybe we should listen, the third hijacker suggested, gripping his seat as the plane shuddered. He's got a point about the storm. Fine, the leader conceded. But no funny business. Marcus nodded meekly while calculating distances in his head. His Air Force training had taught him about psychological warfare. Let your enemy underestimate you, then use their arrogance against them. Course correction complete, Marcus announced, purposely fumbling with the controls to reinforce their low expectations. Should be smoother sailing now. The hijackers relaxed slightly, believing they had intimidated him into compliance. But Marcus knew something they didn't. They were now heading straight toward a military installation, and his emergency transponder had already alerted the Air Force. Would you like me to continue with the next section? Thunder boomed as Marcus executed a sharp roll, sending the unsecured hijackers sprawling. The leader's gun clattered against the cabin wall while the second hijacker slammed into the ceiling. You tricked us, the third man shouted, struggling to aim his weapon. Marcus yanked the controls hard right, then left, using the plane like a weapon. His countless hours in combat maneuvers were paying off. The leader lunged for the cockpit, but Marcus had anticipated this. He cut the cabin pressure, causing the emergency oxygen masks to drop. In the chaos, he pulled his mask on smoothly while the hijackers gasped and stumbled. Last chance to surrender, Marcus called out, his voice steady through the mask. The Air Force has 2 fighters on intercept course. You've got about 3 minutes to decide. The second hijacker, still wheezing, tried to point his gun. Marcus responded with another defensive maneuver, sending the man crashing into his companions. The plane groaned under the strain, but Marcus knew exactly how far he could push the aircraft. Through the windshield, 2 F-16s appeared, flanking the Cessna. The leader's face drained of color as he realized their situation. Marcus leveled the plane, keeping his movements precise despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. On your knees, weapons down, Marcus commanded, his voice carrying the full authority of his military experience. 15 years as a combat pilot taught me more than just flying. The hijackers, finally understanding just who they had underestimated, surrendered. As Marcus guided the plane toward the military airfield below, he allowed himself a small smile. Their prejudice had been their downfall. They'd judged him by his skin color, never bothering to check his credentials. Would you like me to continue with the final section? The runway lights glowed bright as Marcus completed a perfect landing. FBI agents swarmed the plane, taking the stunned hijackers into custody. Sir, that was outstanding flying, the lead agent said, shaking Marcus's hand. Later, at the debriefing, they learned the full story. The hijackers were part of a larger smuggling operation that had targeted Marcus's plane, assuming a black pilot would be an easy mark. Mr. Thompson, the Air Force commander spoke up, your actions today saved lives and broke up an international drug ring. Race should never be used to measure a person's capabilities. Marcus stood tall, thinking of every barrier he'd broken, every prejudice he'd overcome. When people underestimate you based on how you look, he said, they never see the skill, training, and determination coming. That's their mistake, not ours.